Today's sharing is based on Dhammapada study, and we are going to examine one very, very important verse in the Dhammapada. It is verse 2 to 3, where the Buddha actually spoke a very important verse with reference to a lay devotee, teaching people how we can cultivate kindness, peace, and then happiness. By practicing kindness, it brings us peace. And when we have peace, we will experience happiness. Now, before I begin, I would like to point out that there is this PowerPoint slides that you can download. Any one of you who would like to follow this sharing, looking through the slides one by one, please access this link now, tiny.cc/KCBA-Dhammapada223. And then you will be able to download the list or the PowerPoint slides that I'm going to be using. And it can be very useful and helpful if you can follow along. So I hope all of you have gotten the link. All right.
Hello.
Can Brother T mute, please? Okay. Today's sharing is Dhammapada chapter 17, which is entitled Kodha Vagga. It is about Kodha. Kodha means anger, and anger has varying degree. It can be just mild unhappiness with someone, or it can be very strong resentment and hatred towards that person. Today, we're going to examine this verse where it actually talks about the anger that arises in a mild way, and then it became great hatred. Right? So this is the story that the Buddha then uttered this verse. While the Buddha was residing in this Veluvana monastery, the Buddha spoke this verse with reference to a female lay devotee by the name of Lady Uttara. Lady Uttara and her family are very devoted followers of the Buddha. And the Buddha said, conquer the angry with love, the evil with goodness, the miser with charity, and the liar by truth. In short, basically means that when you deal with angry people, the way to deal with them and to respond to them is through loving kindness. And when you deal with evil people, the way to respond to them is to respond with goodness. Because if you respond evil with evil, it gets out of control. Like they say, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. So when you respond to evil people, respond with goodness. When you respond to people who are stingy, miserly, right, do it with charity and generosity. And finally, when you respond to a liar, then do it by truth. Always point out the truth to a liar. So this is really the verse that the Buddha uttered. But there is a very powerful story behind it with Lady Uttara. So let's take a look at this story with Lady Uttara. Lady Uttara is the daughter of a farmer, originally a poor farmer by the name of Punna. Punna, his wife, and his daughter, and their daughter, Lady Uttara, they have been very devoted followers of the Buddha for a long time. Right? So Lady Uttara, the daughter of this laborer, farm laborer, Punna, who worked for a very wealthy landowner by the name of Sumana. So Sumana is the landowner and the employer of Punna when Punna was a farm laborer, just a worker. And Punna and his family are very devoted followers of the Buddha and of the Triple Gem, and they have for a long time continuously been offering alms food to the Mahasangha community. So they visit the temple very regularly, and whenever they have an opportunity, and they make offering to the Sangha by offering alms food and so on. So they have been doing a lot of these charitable work. And one day, Punna and his wife specially offered alms food to Venerable Sariputta when Venerable Sariputta first arose from very deep meditative state known as Nirodha Samapatti. Now, this deep meditative state, Nirodha Samapatti, this is something which a lot of very highly enlightened monks like Sariputta and Moggallananas and the Buddha himself, those very senior enlightened monks, they very often enter into this very deep state of mental stillness. In fact, the mind is so still, it literally stops the mind. And this is their way of retreating from the sensual world. When they enter into this state, they don't have any sense experience, so that if they are feeling painful in the body, I mean, they cannot avoid the body being painful. I mean, the body gets old and they injure themselves sometimes and so on. So the body can be painful. So when they experience pain, they don't allow that to turn into suffering by retreating into this state of mental stillness, so that whatever pain they experience does not become suffering. As the Buddha has pointed out, pain can happen, but suffering is optional. So this is how these enlightened beings are able to go into this stillness of mind, not to experience the pain, so that they will not experience suffering. And when Venerable Sariputta came out of this meditative state, this Punna and his wife offered alms food, and Venerable Sariputta was very grateful to that. Now, the family of Punna has been doing a lot of this very regularly. And because they have been doing so much of this, it turned out to be a blessing for the whole family. As a blessing from their generosity and deep devotion to the Triple Gem, when they were plowing through the land and farming the land that they rented from Sumana, the landowner, they discovered gold in the field that they were plowing. And of course, since they rented that land, whatever they discovered on the land, they could keep. So they discovered the gold and they kept it. And eventually, the whole family became extremely wealthy. In fact, actually, the story is that they became even more wealthy than the landowner, Sumana. So Punna and his family are now very wealthy. So much so that this newfound wealth came to the attention of the king. The king realized, oh, we have a new wealthy person in town. And of course, Punna and his family no longer worked as farmer. They were now known as very wealthy family. And the king even honored Punna by officially declaring him to be what they call the royal banker, whatever that means. That basically has to do with the fact that when the king needed some money, or the king needed someone to finance a project, then the king will call upon these royal bankers to help out. So Punna had reached that very high status of acknowledgement from the king himself. So in other words, they became so blessed with such wealth because of their generosity and their devotion. So in fact, they were so devoted followers of the Buddha, they constantly listened to all the sermons delivered by the Buddha and by Sariputta and by all the senior monks. So finally, there was one day, on one occasion, the whole family, Punna, his wife, and the daughter, Uttara, they offered alms food to the Buddha himself, as well as the monks, continuously for 7 days. And on the last day, when the Buddha gave his sermon, the discourse, they listened so intently that all three members attained Sottapatti fruition. That means they became Sottapan. So this is another blessing. This is a spiritual blessing now, not only material blessing, but now spiritual blessing. The whole family of Punna, his wife, and the daughter Uttara had all become Sottapan. And they were highly acknowledged for that. So Lady Uttara, the daughter of Punna, was arranged to marry another rich man's son. And it so happened that the eligible son of Sumana, the former landowner who was the former employer of Punna. The son was eligible, so they made an arranged marriage between Lady Uttara and the son of Sumana. Unfortunately, the family of Sumana are not Buddhists. They do not follow the teachings of the Buddha. So Sumana's family do not follow the Buddha's teachings. And Lady Uttara felt very disappointed because as a devoted follower of the Buddha, she was very unhappy that she was not able to participate in the regular activities that her parents participate. Because once she's married to Sumana's family, she had to go to the had to stay with Sumana's family, and therefore she no longer had the opportunity to participate in all these dana offering and attending to the Buddha and listening to the discourses of the Buddha. So she was very unhappy. And one day she spoke to her father and she said, "My father, why have you put me in this cage? Here, I do not see any monk and I have no chance to offer anything to any monk." So she was so sad and disappointed. And of course, the father understood that because the father knew that Uttara was raised over the years to attend to the monks and to listen to all the discourses. So now she's no longer able to do that. Then, of course, she is very unhappy, and the father understood that, empathized with her on that. So then the father decided to do something about it. So now Punna the father decided to send a large sum of money to Lady Uttara and say to her, "Why don't you get your husband's permission and then engage someone to take care of your husband so that you can be relieved from the wife's duty for 15 days and go to attend the Buddha's discourses and dana to the Buddha." So it was a great idea. Lady Uttara went to her husband, received permission from her husband to hire a person by the name of Sirimas. Sirimas is well known as a person who is serving wealthy people, a courtesan. Courtesan is somebody, basically courtesan is somebody who serves not as a servant, but as a companion or something like that. And she's very beautiful. So Lady Uttara engaged Sirimas and to look after the husband, the needs of the husband, while Lady Uttara herself and her family would be able to go and attend to the Buddha for 15 days. So that was arranged and everything was working well. So therefore, Sirimas would take Lady Uttara's place as a substitute wife for 15 days. And for 15 days, Lady Uttara prepared food and offered alms food to the Buddha and the contingent of monks, all at that monastery. And they were all very happy. And on the last day, Lady Uttara's husband was watching the whole procession from outside. From the bedroom, he was able to see in the monastery what's going on. So the husband of Lady Uttara felt sorry for her and in fact smiled and in fact was yearning for Lady Uttara, the real wife. And the husband was then uttering, "How foolish she is. She does not know how to enjoy herself. She is tiring herself out with this alms-giving ceremony." So the husband, of course, did not understand the practice of the Buddhists and thought that the wife was being foolish, doing all this hard work for the monks, and felt pity for her, and in fact was showing that he was yearning for her. Now, interestingly enough, Sirimas, who was hired as a substitute wife, became jealous. He saw that the husband was smiling and yearning for Lady Uttara. And this Sirimas, completely forgot the fact that she was just a paid substitute wife. And then she became very jealous. And in fact, even very angry towards Lady Uttara. So when the ceremony was over, as Lady Uttara was coming back to the house, Sirimas came up with a plan to hurt her, because Sirimas did not want Lady Uttara to return to the husband and then Sirimas is out of favor. So Sirimas was unable to control herself. So she went to the kitchen and started boiling a very hot, big pot of boiling oil, very hot, and standing upstairs waiting for Lady Uttara to come home, and thinking that as soon as Lady Uttara entered the house, she would pour the hot oil over Lady Uttara so that she could stop Lady Uttara from serving as the wife, right? So with this intention to pour it over the head of Lady Uttara out of anger and resentment. So Sirimas was a very evil person at this point in time. But Lady Uttara, of course, had a different thinking. Lady Uttara knew what was going on because somehow, as a Sotapan, she already had some way of sensing dangers as she was coming back to the house. And she was able to see that Sirimas was about to approach her with evil intention, because Lady Uttara could sense that. But at the same time, Lady Uttara was a devoted practitioner, devoted follower of the Buddha. So she was practicing metta. So Lady Uttara did not harbor any ill will or vengeance towards Sirimas, because she knew that she could not do that. And because she was also grateful to Sirimas, knowing that because of Sirimas, Lady Uttara was able to leave the husband for 15 days to attend to the Buddha and the community of monks, and was able to listen to the Dhamma and make offering of alms food for 15 days and perform other acts of charity with the help of Sirimas. So Lady Uttara was actually very grateful to this Sirimas, the substitute wife, for doing the job. Therefore, she did not harbor any ill will or vengeance towards Sirimas. In fact, Lady Uttara felt very thankful to Sirimas. So, in other words, you could tell that Lady Uttara was very well practiced. So she was practicing metta throughout. So metta can help to protect Lady Uttara from danger. So as Sirimas was about to pour hot oil over Lady Uttara's head, Lady Uttara made this asseveration. It's like a salutation to herself. And she said to herself, if I bear any ill will towards Sirimas, may this hot oil burn me. And if I have no ill will towards her, may it not harm me. Because she couldn't avoid the fact that entering the house, Sirimas was going to pour the hot oil over her. And again, this word, very important. When I came across this word, I haven't seen this word before, so I want to clarify. This word, asseveration, means it's a solemn and emphatic declaration and statement. Something you say to yourself very seriously, not really as a vow, but as an aspiration. Right? So like we Buddhists also do that. May all beings be well. That is also a kind of asseveration. So in this case, Lady Uttara said to herself that if she carried any ill will, she will be hurt by the hot oil. But if she has no ill will, then the hot oil will not harm her. This is her wish. And as she entered, of course, the oil was poured over her. The boiling hot oil did not harm Lady Uttara at all. In fact, it was just like cold water over her head. So of course she got wet, but she was not harmed. It was just like cold water. So amazingly, Lady Uttara was not harmed at all. And of course, when that happened, Sirimas was disappointed on seeing the failed attempt. Sirimas became even more angry, became further enraged, so much so that she actually wanted to do more. So Sirimas decided to go and make another pot of hot oil. But of course, by that time, all the attendants in the house the maids and the servants in the house saw what was going on. So they actually tried to stop Sirimas. And in the process of stopping Sirimas, who was making the hot boiling oil, they were trying to hold her. Sirimas accidentally poured the oil on herself. So Sirimas burned herself with this hot oil, and she became badly injured because of that. And this is her own fault. She was boiling the hot oil, and the servants tried to stop her from pouring the oil over Lady Uttara one more time. So now, seeing that Sirimas has hurt herself with the boiling hot oil, Lady Uttara, out of her compassion, out of her metta, instructed the attendants to very quickly help Sirimas and rub the medicinal ointment on her wound because she was burned by the hot oil. So Lady Uttara went out of her way and got all the servants to help and heal this Sirimas, help the Sirimas to recover from being burned by the hot oil. So that was really an act of compassion by Lady Uttara. And upon experiencing that, Sirimas realized she was wrong, because now she saw that Lady Uttara, despite all the ill will that Sirimas had towards Lady Uttara and all the harm she tried to do to her, Lady Uttara was still being kind and compassionate towards Sirimas. So Sirimas realized that she was wrong. So now Sirimas regretted her actions, realizing she was really only a substitute wife. She had no right to be jealous. Her duty is over. She cannot expect any more from the husband of Uttara. She should leave. That's really what she realized in the end. And then she went and asked Lady Uttara for forgiveness. Of course, Lady Uttara was a wise lady also, because it is not something you can just forgive and forget, So Lady Uttara realized that Sirimas needed to be taught by the Buddha properly. So before Sirimas would be forgiven, Lady Uttara asked that Sirimas first seek the advice of the Buddha. So Lady Uttara wanted the Sirimas to go and see the Buddha and let the Buddha counsel her so that she can learn something from the Buddha. Because in the household of the family of Sumana and the husband of Lady Uttara, they were not Buddhists. So therefore, obviously, Sirimas would not have been a Buddhist before. So now, Lady Uttara wanted to arrange for Sirimas to go and see the Buddha and learn something from the Buddha. So the next day, the following day, it was arranged that Sirimas should now make an offer of alms food to the Buddha and the monks, and at the same time receive advice and counsel from the Buddha. And that was all arranged. Then, of course, Lady Uttara had to inform the Buddha what was happening. So when the Buddha was told about the wrongdoing of Sirimas towards Lady Uttara, the Buddha asked Lady Uttara how she felt about the whole incident. So in a way, it's good. The Buddha wanted Lady Uttara to express herself. How do you feel when somebody had ill will and wanted to hurt you and harm you and hurt herself? Now you are supposed to forgive her. How do you feel about it? And basically, Lady Uttara responded to the Buddha, "Venerable Sir, because I am grateful to Sirimas, I bear no ill will or hatred towards her. I only radiated my loving kindness or metta towards her." So that is actually very profound. That's exactly what Lady Uttara did. And of course, the Buddha then applauded Lady Uttara. "Well done, well done. By not bearing any ill will, you have been able to conquer one who abuses you. By being generous, you should conquer one who is miserly. By speaking the truth, you should conquer one who tells lies." So this is a very important lesson that everyone should understand. And this is what the Buddha actually applauded Lady Uttara for practicing metta in the proper way. So now it is time that Lady Uttara needs to forgive Sirimas. So therefore, Lady Uttara was summoned to the Buddha's presence. And therefore, Lady Uttara finally forgave Sirimas. And when that happened, that was when the Buddha uttered this verse for everyone to hear. Right? So now let's examine the verse in Pali. As I said, this is chapter 17, Kodha Vagga. Kodha means anger. And in this case, Kodha has different degree of anger. It could be just a mild anger of some jealousy or resentment to very, very deep hatred and enragement. So it can be very deep hatred also. So different levels. So therefore, in this verse, I am using the translation by Venerable Sarada, who was who has a Dhammapada book that had all the translations of the Pali. Very well done. So this verse, the first verse, Akodena jine kodam. Kodam means the angry person. Kodha is anger. Kodam is the person who is angry. And Akodena means the opposite of anger. So your response to that should be the opposite of anger. And that is how you can conquer anger. So Akodena jine kodam simply means by practicing loving kindness, you can conquer the angry person. So conquer the angry person with loving kindness or with love. Then the next verse, asadung, means the wicked or evil person. And saduna means with goodness. Right? Came from the root word, same root word as saddha. Saddha actually means to uphold goodness. So saduna means with goodness. So therefore, this second verse, asadung saduna jine, meaning you can conquer the wicked person by practicing goodness. And then the next verse, kadariyang, means the miserly person, the person who is very stingy, miserly person. And the way to conquer the miserly person is through charity. Right? Danena from the same root word as dana, right? Giving. So danena means giving, the act of charity. So the way to conquer the miserly and stingy person is to offer charity and generosity. And the miserly person is conquered through charity. And finally, the last verse is about a person who tells lies, right? And you overcome that by truth. So the last verse basically says to then conquer the liar by truth. So therefore, this verse 2-3 simply is conquer the angry with love, the evil with goodness, the miser through charity, and the liar by truth. So this is really a very powerful statement that the Buddha made. And that story, I hope, has been very inspiring. You can download this document so you can read the whole story. So I hope this story has been inspiring, and this is really the essence of what this story is all about. That Lady Uttara practiced metta, and because she practiced metta, her practice of metta has protected her. In fact, the title of this particular story is Metta Protects Lady Uttara. So in other words, people who practice metta will benefit from it, not only because they are being kind, but they actually can have tremendous benefit from it. And this is mentioned in one of the sutra, the Mettanisamsa Sutta. I'll come to that in a moment. Before we do that, let us now just listen to Bhante Punnaji explain a little bit about metta. Now, this is a fairly long explanation, 6 minutes, so bear with it.
The teaching of the Buddha is based on what is called metta. Metta is the Pali word. The Sanskrit word is Maitri. And that word means universal goodwill or universal benevolence or a universal interest in the welfare of all beings, a concern about the welfare of all beings. That means it is a broad mind, not a narrow mind. So the 5 precepts are practiced not to avoid punishment or to gain rewards. The 5 precepts are practiced because we are concerned about the welfare of others. The 5 precepts are mainly concerned about how we relate to other people. The first precept is about not harming anyone. Second precept is about not stealing. Third precept is about not committing adultery. And the fourth precept is about controlling our speech, which hurts other people. And the fifth precept is about taking intoxicants or being carried away by our emotions, so that we begin to hurt others. So we are trying to avoid that. So all that is based on how we relate to other people. It is based on a concern for the welfare of all beings, not only thinking about ourselves. It is based on a broad mind. That breadth of mind is what is called metta or maitri. This is why I call it universal benevolence or universal goodwill. We cannot have metta for one person. This is why it is not just love. Love is something that you can have for just one person. But metta is for all beings. You cannot have metta even for the people of your own country. Patriotism is not metta. Metta cannot be only for human beings with no compassion for animals. That is not metta. Metta is for all beings. It is a concern for the welfare of all beings. That is the broad mind, where we think of all beings. It is very important to understand this, because the morality or ethics of the teachings of the Buddha is based on a broad mind. And when we cultivate metta, we are cultivating a broad mind.
Bhante Punnaji was explaining that when we cultivate metta, we are cultivating a broad mind, meaning the mind actually encompasses all beings, not just thinking of one person or even a group of persons, but all beings, and including not only human beings, but all beings. Now, in this case, Lady Uttara was practicing metta because to her own family, she would have what we call love. But she was practicing metta to all beings regardless. And that included Sirimas, who originally was just a stranger to her, but employed as a temporary substitute wife. And during that time, despite the fact that Sirimas tried to hurt her, Lady Uttara practiced metta, regardless of who she is. So therefore, metta is to all beings, without conditions, unconditionally basically, and it is not restricted to specific persons. Metta belongs to this category. In fact, metta appears in many places, but here it belongs to these 4 Brahma Vihara, the 4 divine dwellings of the Brahmas, also known as the 4 immeasurables. There is another word for the same thing, apamanya. So apamanya actually refers to the same thing as these 4 Brahma Vihara, the 4 immeasurables. And they are boundless. That's why it's called immeasurable. Metta, commonly known as loving kindness, Bhante Punnaji pointed out a more accurate explanation of metta is universal benevolence. Benevolence is the practice of kindness and love towards others. Universal here means with no conditions who it is. It is all beings. That's why it's universal. So universal benevolence is a more accurate and precise explanation of the meaning of the word metta. Metta also has other meanings like goodwill, loving kindness, right? So therefore, universal benevolence has a much broader meaning. Then with metta, it is followed by karuna. And here it is compassion, selfless giving. Compassion is really an action. Compassion is not just an aspiration. Metta can be both an aspiration, that means wanting to help someone, and engaging in helping someone. So both aspiration and action. But karuna is a very deep form of action. Compassion acted out, played out in real life. The act of really helping people. So therefore, karuna is a much deeper meaning than metta. It is the practice of selfless giving. It is not just wanting to give. It is not just feeling kind towards someone, but really doing things out of your way, selfless, to give, to help, to practice compassion. And when we do that, we actually bring to ourselves a sense of happiness from this practice, because this would be called altruistic happiness, the happiness that arises from selflessness. And with that, the mind can become calm, the mind can reach a state of equanimity. Therefore, upekkha comes next. Therefore, the 4 of them are called the 4 divine dwelling: metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. In today's sharing, we're basically just focusing on metta, and I'm going to expand a little bit on karuna in a moment. where I will also get Bhante Punnaji's explanation of karuna in a moment. But let's move on with metta for a while. And when we cultivate these four immeasurables, what can happen is that if you devote yourself to practicing the four immeasurables, practicing metta, karuna, and then experiencing mudita and bringing the mind to a state of equanimity with upekkha, then if you've done that well and developed it, then you could be reborn in the higher realm, the Brahma realm, called Brahma Loka. This is why it is called Chattari Brahma Vihara. Brahma is referring to that realm of the higher realm of the Brahmas, and Vihara basically is a dwelling, or for lack of a better word, some people call it temple, but it's basically the spiritual dwelling. Right? So this is really the essence of metta, which is part of the four Brahma Viharas, four immeasurables. Now let's listen to Bhante Punnaji explain the meaning of karuna. That is to take metta one step further. And karuna is the deepening of the practice of metta.
And when we cultivate metta, metta turns into karuna. Karuna is not another kind of thought or a different kind of mental state. Karuna is an expansion of metta. Metta grows into karuna. When we practice metta, metta grows into karuna. Then what is karuna? Karuna is where we don't distinguish between ourselves and others. That others are as important as ourselves. Karuna is like the depth dimension. Metta is like the length and breadth, the area dimension. And karuna is how deeply are we interested in the welfare of all beings. Just as a mother thinks of her only child, and is even willing to sacrifice her own life for the sake of this child. In the same way, we begin to become concerned about the welfare of all beings, and we lose our selfishness. In karuna, the selfishness disappears. Just like a river falling into the ocean and loses its identity. It becomes the water of the ocean. The river is no more. In the same way, when karuna appears, the self disappears. And that disappearance of self. Means all unhappiness disappears. Because all unhappiness is self-centered.
So all unhappiness is self-centered. And Bhante mentioned clearly that karuna is the deepening of metta. Metta is something broad, we spread out. So it's the breadth dimension, the length and the width. As we spread out our practice, that is metta. But when we spread out our practice, we deepen the practice further, and that is karuna. And karuna leads to giving up selfishness altogether. So when a person practices karuna, that person has completely given up this selfishness, self-centeredness. And this is one of those things that this Lady Uttara has accomplished. This is why she had become a Sotapan. She was able to give up this sense of personality, this self-centeredness. So therefore she became a Sotapan because of her practice. And in the story, you notice that there was a part where as Sirimas poured hot oil over Lady Uttara, that Lady Uttara did not get hurt. So she was actually protected by metta. And therefore, the Buddha has actually explained that practicing metta, and here we mean properly, really practicing metta of selflessness and loving kindness, we can be protected. And the Buddha mentioned there are 11 benefits that we can derive out of practicing of metta. And this is from the Anguttara Nikaya, book of 11, Sutra number 15, Mettanisamsa Sutta, where the Buddha said, because when the liberation of the mind by loving kindness has been pursued, cultivated, and developed, made a vehicle and basis, carried out, consolidated, and properly undertaken, 11 benefits are to be expected. Now, before we go further, let's look at this statement. It's very powerful. It contains a lot of things. It says, when the liberation of the mind, which means now you're training the mind to be free from the self, freedom from existence. So ultimately, you will attain Nibbana. You will become an Arahant. So when you are practicing towards that, and you are using metta as the actual practice, therefore you have to go through the pursue, cultivated, and develop. And what does that mean? Pursuit means you have metta as a goal, an aspiration, something you want to accomplish, something that you are striving towards. And that is the meaning of pursuit. Striving towards something is one thing, but now you got to put it into practice, cultivate. So doing it, going through the whole process of doing it diligently, that is cultivate. And when you're able to cultivate, you begin to benefit from the results, from the fruits of your cultivation, and that is developed. So these three words have very strong meaning. Pursue means having the goal in mind and going after it without holding back. You want to accomplish that. It is a goal, an aspiration that you want to accomplish. Cultivate means you go through the process of doing. Develop means you now benefit from the fruits of it. Now, the word cultivate is often mixed up with develop. Some people say, oh, cultivation, that's the same as development. Actually, it's not. Cultivation is one thing, development is another thing. I'll give you an example. Right? Let's say you have a garden, you move into a new house and the garden is in a mess. You want to turn that into a beautiful garden. So what do? You begin to clear the garden of all the weeds. You begin to put on a layer of good soil and you start to plant some grass. Then you begin to plant some flowers, to have some beautiful flowers to be planted in the garden. All that action is cultivation. You are cultivating the garden. So as you plant the seeds and clear the weeds, and every week or every day you water the plants, you clear the weeds, and you keep doing that, and eventually flowers begin to pop up. Now you have a beautiful garden. Now you have developed your garden. So now you see the difference. Cultivating your garden is the act of doing it diligently, right? And development is really bringing up the results, producing the results of what it is, not just only doing, but taking it to the final fruition, right? So pursue, cultivated, and developed. Made a vehicle and basis. Made a vehicle means now based on that practice, it becomes your practice in life. It becomes part of your life. It's no longer just something you do by the way. It's not a side action. It's part of your life. You live it. So it's not just a livelihood thing. It's really a lifestyle thing. You actually live it. So now you live through the practice of metta. It's no longer something you do once in a while. It is part of your life. And then you carry it out. That means you actually do it. Do it, consolidate it means with no exceptions, unconditionally, everything is to be included, all the practice of metta and karuna. And properly undertaken means with wisdom. That means now you do it with wisdom. You understand how to practice it properly. So properly undertaken. 11 benefits are to be expected. So here the Buddha said that if you do all this, you can gain 11 benefits. So what 11 benefits are they? So the 11 benefits of practicing metta, number one, you are able to sleep well, which means when you go to sleep, you can just fall asleep without staying awake the whole night. And when you're able to sleep well and deep sleep, when you wake up, you will feel good. You will feel peaceful and happy. And during your sleep, you won't have nightmares. I mean, you won't be dreaming of the crazy things. And so this actually, number three, is a very interesting thing. Someone did come to me and say, Billy, you know, every night I have crazy dreams. I have these nightmares. What can I do? Well, I gave a very simple advice. I say, practice more metta. That's what it is. When you practice more metta, you will realize you're not going to have wild dreams. You're not going to have bad dreams. You're not going to have nightmares. So this is a hint. These first three is the solution to having a good night's sleep. Do more charity, do more goodness, do more kindness, and you will be able to sleep better. You will be able to wake up happier, and you will not have nightmares. Simple as that. And then you become very pleasing to other people. People like you. You know, they think you are a good guy because that's what you do. You're always practicing kindness. So you must be a good guy. And not only to human beings, but also to heavenly beings. So the devas and the deities, they come to you. You know, you attract them. They will surround you. And when they surround you, they will protect you. So now again, you see, number 5 and number 6, by practicing metta, you actually attract the attention of these heavenly beings who have a little bit more power than you. Not like, well, of course, I'm not going to be able to go into what kind of powers and all that, but, you know, they are at a higher level of existence, whereas we are at the lower level of existence. So these heavenly beings are the higher beings, and they would have the ability to do something to help you, right? But I would also like to caution one not to be superstitious. Don't be kind just because you hope to gain this benefit. No, be kind because you want to be kind, because you pursue kindness. Don't do it for this, just for the sake of gaining this, because you won't gain it if that's your intention. Everything is centered around intention. Karma is centered around intention. So therefore, practice metta, and you will sleep well, and you will attract the attention of heavenly beings who can help you. And that could well explain how Lady Uttara was protected from the hot oil when it was poured over her head. Right? And again, here it is very clear. Fire, poison, weapons do not injure you. Here, what the Buddha was trying to say is those very nasty way of hurting people, very terrible way of ending a life, it will not happen to you. So in other words, you're not likely to die from this kind of very nasty circumstances, right? You will be able to die more peacefully. And your mind becomes more tranquil. Right? The word is samadhi. Unfortunately, the translation is concentrated, but the real meaning of samadhi is tranquil. Your mind becomes, your mind can enter into a state of tranquility. And this here also reminds us of a very important thing. Some people say that, and they're saying, oh, I try so hard to meditate, I can't seem to meditate. Every time I sit there, I try to meditate. After just a couple of minutes, my mind starts to have all kinds of thoughts, and I'm not able to quiet the mind. Well, what's the solution? Practice more metta. When you practice more metta, you will experience number 8. Your mind is able to settle down and become more peaceful, and then you can meditate more successfully. Simple as that, right? And one's facial complexion is serene, composed, and peaceful. That means you will have nice, supple, soft skin, you know, instead of a very nasty looking face. You will look more pleasant, and people like to see such pleasant face. You will have a happy, smiling face. That's what it is. So your facial complexion will be very pleasing to other people. Serene. It is not aggressive or arrogant or anything. It's very peaceful, composed, right? And of course, finally, most importantly, at the time of your death, your mind is free from delusion. If you have been practicing metta, you will die peacefully, right? So you can see these are all the major benefits. And the last one, this is a very crucial one. It says, if one does not penetrate further, bracket, nibbana, one fares on to the Brahma world. So what this simply means is that if you really practice metta, you pursue, you cultivate, and you develop metta, then if you don't attain nibbana, if you don't become an arahant eventually, you could be reborn in the higher realm, in the Brahma realm. And this is mentioned in the sutra. So you could be reborn in the higher realm if you do not attain nibbana during your lifetime. So this is really a good thing. You live in a more tranquil, peaceful world. This is the formless world, arupa realm. Right? So all these are 11 benefits from practicing metta. So I hope this would inspire people to practice metta. But do realize, practice it from the purity of heart. Don't practice it because you want to chase after these 11 benefits. You know, practice it because you realize that it is the good thing to do. It is the right thing to do. And knowing that when you do it, you will gain benefits from it. But benefits are not the reason you do. Benefits are simply the fruits that you will harness from doing so. So therefore, this is very clearly stated by the Buddha in this Mettanisamsa Sutta. Right? So that is how we can practice kindness. And when we do that, we will bring upon us a life that is peaceful. And when we experience peaceful life, we will experience happiness simply by practicing metta, gaining kindness, peace, and happiness in our life. And I hope this has been helpful. And finally, here is a reminder of the link to download the slides if you have missed the beginning. So please feel free to download these slides and post your questions. And with that, I end my sharing. Thank you very much. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.